Tonight, welcome back to History for Sleep, a place where the past slows down, where questions matter more than answers, and where history is not rushed, but gently explored. As you settle in, allow your breathing to soften. There is nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to remember, only stories carried across thousands of years, from people who lived, loved, feared, and wondered what came next. Tonight's story is about death, but more importantly, it is about belief. Because long before modern science, ancient cultures across the world devoted extraordinary care, creativity, and ritual to preparing for what they believed awaited them after life ended. Not all cultures feared death. Many planned for it. They built cities for it. They preserved bodies for it. They packed meals, maps, spells, servants, animals, even jokes, for the journey beyond. Some believed the soul would travel. Others believed it would be judged. Some thought it would return. And some believed it would merge back into the universe itself. What unites them all is this: ancient people did not see death as an ending. They saw it as a transition. Tonight, we explore the unexpected ways ancient cultures prepared for the afterlife, the rituals we understand, the practices we only partly grasp, and the mysteries that still refuse to explain themselves. And as we move slowly through these ancient beliefs, you may notice something familiar, because the questions they asked are the same ones we still ask today. Long before pyramids pierced the sky, humans were already thinking about what happened after the final breath. Some of the earliest known burial sites date back over 100,000 years. In caves across the Middle East and Europe, archaeologists have discovered human remains carefully placed in the ground, not discarded, not abandoned, but arranged. Bodies laid on their sides, hands positioned, flowers scattered nearby. This suggests something profound. Even our earliest ancestors believed death mattered. They didn't yet build monuments. They didn't yet carve symbols. But they paused. And pausing for the dead means believing something continues. One of the most famous and misunderstood cultures obsessed with the afterlife was ancient Egypt. To the Egyptians, life on earth was only one chapter. The true existence began after death. But survival beyond the grave was not guaranteed. It required preparation. The Egyptians believed the human soul was not a single thing, but many parts. The Ka, the life force. The Ba, the personality. The Ak, the transformed spirit. The Ib, the heart. And the Ren, the name. For the afterlife to succeed, all these elements had to reunite. This is why the body had to be preserved. Mummification was not about vanity, it was about logistics. Without the body, the soul would have nowhere to return. But mummification was only the beginning. The dead were buried with food, furniture, jewelry, weapons, board games, and sometimes letters. Because the afterlife was imagined as a continuation of daily life, not an abstract heaven but a familiar world. Yet there was also judgment. After death, the soul would stand before Osiris, ruler of the underworld. The heart would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the symbol of truth. If the heart was heavier, burdened by wrongdoing, it would be devoured by a creature known as Ammit. Not punished, erased. To protect themselves, Egyptians packed tombs with spells from the Book of the Dead, instructions, passwords, and declarations of innocence. Some of these spells were incredibly specific. They included lines such as, "I have not stolen. I have not caused pain. I have not polluted water." It was not enough to live well. You had to prove it. But Egypt was not alone in its preparations. Across ancient China, beliefs about the afterlife took a different shape. Rather than judgment, Chinese traditions emphasized continuity. The dead did not leave entirely. They became ancestors, and ancestors required care. Tombs were stocked with everyday items, pots, mirrors, clothing, but also with minchi, miniature models of houses, servants, animals, and tools. These were not symbolic. They were believed to become real in the spirit world. During the Han Dynasty, some tombs contained entire underground estates, complete with kitchens, stables, and guards. Emperors were buried with armies. The most famous example is the terracotta army of Qin Shi Huang. Over 8,000 life-size soldiers, each with unique faces, arranged to protect the emperor in the afterlife. Why such effort? Because the afterlife was not a place of rest. It was a continuation of power. And without preparation, power could be lost. Some scholars believe these practices reveal a deeper fear, not of death but of insignificance. To be remembered was to continue existing. In Mesoamerica, the Aztecs believed the afterlife depended not on morality, but on how you died. Warriors who died in battle followed the sun. Women who died in childbirth joined them. Those who drowned went to Tlalocan, a paradise of eternal spring. Most people, however, traveled to Mictlan, a shadowy underworld that required a 4-year journey through dangerous terrain. To help the dead, families buried them with dogs. The dogs were believed to guide souls across a treacherous river. This belief persisted for centuries. Even today, the Xoloitzcuintli dog is associated with death and protection. Was this metaphor? Or did ancient people truly believe animals could cross between worlds? Some anthropologists argue these beliefs were psychological tools, a way to process grief. Others suggest something deeper, because similar guide animal myths appear across unrelated cultures. And this is where theories begin. Some researchers propose that shared afterlife imagery points to common neurological experiences, visions during death or altered states. Others suggest ancient humans may have observed phenomena we no longer understand. Near-death experiences, lucid dreams, hallucinations interpreted as journeys. There are even fringe theories, controversial and unproven, that ancient cultures accessed altered states through ritual, plants, or sound frequencies that shaped their beliefs about consciousness beyond death. These ideas remain debated, but one thing is certain. Ancient cultures invested enormous resources in preparing for something they could not confirm. As the centuries moved forward, different cultures imagined the afterlife not below the ground, but across the sea. For the Vikings, death was not a quiet ending, it was a voyage. When a great warrior died, their body was often placed inside a ship, real or symbolic, surrounded by weapons, food, animals, and personal belongings. The ship was then buried, or set aflame and pushed out into open water. Fire and motion mattered. The Vikings believed the soul traveled to other realms, Valhalla, Folkvanger, or Hell, depending not on goodness but on courage and circumstance. Valhalla was not a paradise of rest. It was a place of endless preparation. The dead trained every day for a final cosmic battle known as Ragnarok. This belief shaped how Vikings lived. To die quietly was not shameful, but it was not ideal. A good death was active, intentional, prepared for. Some scholars believe these beliefs helped Vikings face an unpredictable world of storms, warfare, and long voyages. Others suggest something more symbolic, that the ship burial represents humanity's oldest metaphor for death. A crossing. High above the clouds in the mountains of Tibet, the afterlife took a radically different form. There, the body was not preserved. It was offered. In sky burials, the dead were carried to sacred heights and exposed to the open air. Birds, often vultures, consumed the remains. To outsiders, this practice seems shocking. But within Tibetan Buddhism, it is deeply compassionate. The body is considered an empty vessel. The soul has already moved on. Offering the body feeds life and completes a cycle. There is no attachment, no fear, no preservation, only impermanence. This belief is rooted in the idea that clinging causes suffering, and that letting go is the final act of wisdom. Some monks believe the sky burial also teaches the living. To witness death is to understand life. Across prehistoric Europe, death was aligned not with earth or sky, but with the stars. Stone tombs such as Newgrange in Ireland were constructed so precisely that on the winter solstice, sunlight travels through a narrow passage and illuminates the inner chamber. Once per year, 4 minutes, after thousands of years. This was not accidental. The alignment suggests that death and rebirth were tied to celestial cycles. When the sun died in winter, it was reborn. And so, perhaps, were the dead. Similar alignments appear in ancient tombs across Malta, Scotland, and Iberia. The dead were positioned carefully, facing specific directions, under specific skies. Some researchers believe these structures functioned as cosmic gateways, symbolic doorways between worlds. Others believe ancient cultures possessed advanced astronomical knowledge lost to time. And a few, more speculative, theories suggest ancient people believed the soul traveled among the stars. The same stars they carefully memorized. The same stars they named. The same stars that still look down on us tonight. In ancient South America, the Inca treated death not as separation, but relocation. Important figures were mummified and kept active within society. They were dressed, fed, consulted. Mummies attended ceremonies. They owned land. They received offerings. They influenced politics. To the Inca, ancestors were not memories. They were participants. This challenges modern assumptions about death being final. In Inca belief, time was circular. Past, present, and future overlapped. To honor the dead was to stabilize the world. Some historians believe this practice strengthens social cohesion. Others believe it reveals a deeper worldview, one in which consciousness persists in forms we don't fully understand. And then, there are the mysteries. Across unrelated cultures we find repeating patterns. A judgment after death. A journey or crossing. Guides or guardians. Preparation through ritual. Objects meant to function beyond life. Why do these ideas appear everywhere? Were they psychological comfort? Shared symbolism? Or something learned? Some theorists suggest ancient humans experienced altered states during fasting, ritual chanting, or plant use, leading to vivid visions interpreted as the afterlife. Others suggest near-death experiences shaped belief systems. Tunnel imagery, light, presence, review of life. Strikingly similar descriptions appear in ancient texts. And then there are the conspiracies. Ideas that ancient cultures possessed knowledge about consciousness that modern society has forgotten. That death is not an end, but a shift in awareness. That preparation mattered because the transition was real. These ideas remain unproven, but they persist across time, across belief systems, across continents. In many ancient cultures, the face was believed to be the key to identity in the afterlife. This belief gave rise to burial masks, some of the most haunting and carefully crafted objects humanity has ever made. In ancient Egypt, masks were not decoration. They were technology. The famous golden mask of Tutankhamun was designed to do something very specific: help the soul recognize its body. Egyptians believed the human being was made of several parts: the Ka, the Ba, the Ak, the name, the shadow, and the physical form. The body decayed too much. The soul could become lost. Mummification preserved the body. The mask preserved the identity. Facial features were idealized, not realistic. The goal was not to capture age or imperfection, but essence. Some priests believed the mask acted like a beacon. Others believed it functioned as a spiritual interface, allowing the soul to interact with the world beyond death. Similar masks appear in Mycenaean Greece, ancient China, and Mesoamerica. Independent cultures. Same idea. Identity must survive death. Children were treated differently in the afterlife, and these differences reveal how ancient societies understood innocence. In many ancient cultures, children were believed to exist closer to the spirit world. They were thought to arrive from somewhere, and possibly return. Among the Maya, child burials often included toys, figurines, and miniature tools. Not offerings of status, but familiarity. In parts of ancient Europe, children were buried beneath homes. This was not neglect. It was protection. The dead child became a guardian spirit of the household. In Japan, the concept of mizuko, water children, described unborn or deceased children as spirits drifting between worlds. They were honored gently, not feared. These beliefs suggest something profound: that early humans may have sensed consciousness before language, before memory, before identity fully formed, and they respected it. But not all cultures felt comforted by the dead. Some were afraid, very afraid. Across Eastern Europe, burial practices were designed to prevent the dead from returning. Bodies were buried face down. Stones were placed in mouths. Heads were removed. Chests were pinned with iron. These were not acts of cruelty. They were acts of fear. The dead were believed to retain hunger, anger, awareness. The legends of vampires and revenants did not begin as fiction. They began as explanations. Unexplained illness, sudden death, sleep paralysis. People looked for causes, and sometimes they looked to the grave. Anthropologists suggest these practices reveal something deeply human. When death feels unpredictable, we try to control it, even after it happens. In ancient China, the afterlife was bureaucratic. Just like life, the dead entered a mirror version of the imperial court. They were judged, registered, assigned roles. Paper money, houses, servants, and goods were burned so they could exist in the next world. This tradition continues today. Burning offerings is not symbolic. It is functional. The smoke carries value. Some scholars argue this system reinforced social order. Others believe it reflects a belief that consciousness persists. But within familiar systems, you do not awaken to chaos. You awaken to structure. And then there are the things we still cannot explain. Burials with objects no one can identify. Bodies arranged in positions that make no anatomical sense. Graves aligned with stars that had no visible importance at the time. Some tombs show signs of reopening, not by robbers, but intentionally, ritually, repeatedly. Why return to the dead? Some believe the living sought guidance. Others believe ancestors were believed to awaken periodically. And a few theories, more controversial, suggest that ancient cultures believed the dead could communicate. That dreams were not imagination. That visions were not metaphor. That death was not silence. Even today, neuroscience cannot fully explain consciousness. We do not know where it originates. We do not know why it fades. We do not know if it ends. Ancient cultures did not pretend to know either. But they prepared. They respected. They built systems to guide the unknown. Perhaps that is the most unexpected truth. That preparation itself mattered more than certainty. Across ancient civilizations, one belief appears again and again: that death was not a destination, but a passage. And passages almost always require a test. In ancient Egypt, the soul faced the weighing of the heart. After death, the heart, believed to contain memory, intention, and truth, was placed on a scale. On the other side sat the feather of Ma'at, the principle of cosmic balance. If the heart was heavier than the feather, burdened by wrongdoing, it was devoured, not punished, erased. To ancient Egyptians, this was worse than hell. Non-existence. This is why hearts were preserved inside mummies while other organs were removed. The heart was needed later. It would be questioned, listened to, judged. Some tombs even included spells instructing the heart not to betray its owner. Imagine that. A civilization so aware of inner guilt that they feared their own conscience after death. In ancient Mesopotamia, the afterlife was far less comforting. The dead entered a shadowy realm where all souls, good or bad, lived equally dim existences. There was no reward, no punishment, only continuation. This belief produced a very different burial practice. People focused intensely on life. Joy mattered more than morality. Legacy mattered more than salvation. Some historians believe this worldview gave rise to humanity's earliest existential questions. If nothing improves after death, then now is everything. Meanwhile, in Mesoamerica, death was movement. The Aztecs believed most people did not go to the realm of gods, but to Mictlan, a layered underworld. To reach it, the soul had to cross rivers, climb mountains, endure winds of obsidian, and pass through darkness. That journey took 4 years, which is why bodies were buried with dogs. The Xoloitzcuintli, a sacred companion believed to guide the soul across the final river. Even today, archaeologists find these dogs buried beside humans, not sacrificed, watered, because no one should cross alone. Some cultures believe death could be delayed or reversed. In ancient Tibet, sky burials exposed bodies to vultures. This was not disrespect, it was transformation. The body became nourishment. Consciousness moved on. Nothing was wasted. But what fascinates researchers is this. Some Tibetan texts describe advanced meditators who could remain aware after death. Their bodies did not decay. They emitted warmth. For days. Modern science struggles to explain these reports. Even now, monks sometimes sit beside the dead, waiting. Food appears in nearly every burial tradition on earth. Bread, grain, fruit, wine, meat, honey. Why? Because hunger was believed to survive death. But not just physical hunger. Emotional hunger, longing, familiarity. Offering food was an act of comfort, a message that said, "You are still cared for." In ancient Rome, families held meals at graves. They spoke to the dead, laughed, updated them on life. Death did not end relationships. It changed the format. Some of the most unsettling discoveries involve empty graves, tombs carefully built and never filled, or graves that once held bodies and then didn't. Not robbed, removed. Where did they go? Some theories suggest reburial rituals. Others suggest bodies were moved closer to sacred centers over time. And some, more speculative, suggest belief in resurrection, that the dead would return and needed to be free. Across continents, cultures, and thousands of years, one truth remains clear. Ancient humans did not treat death as silence. They treated it as transition. They planned for it, prepared for it, spoke to it, and built worlds around it. Not because they knew what came next, but because they refused to face the unknown unprepared. As your thoughts slow and the noise of the day fades, remember this. Every ritual we uncover is a whisper. Every grave is a message. And every belief, no matter how strange, came from the same place. A human mind trying to understand what happens when awareness lets go. History does not give us answers. It gives us company. And tonight, that is enough. There is something quietly profound in how many ancient cultures believed the dead could still hear. In ancient China, ancestors were not gone. They were present, attentive, and influential. Families burned paper versions of real-world objects. Houses, clothing, tools, even money. Not symbols, replacements. The belief was simple and intimate. Whatever is burned here arrives there. This practice wasn't about superstition alone. It created continuity, a sense that love, responsibility, and care did not end with breath. Some scholars believe ancestor worship shaped Chinese social structure more than any written law, because when the dead are watching, behavior matters. In Scandinavia, the Vikings prepared for multiple afterlives. Warriors hoped for Valhalla. Others believed in hell, a quieter realm. Some believed the dead lived inside their burial mounds, awake, aware, protective. This belief explains why weapons were bent before burial. Not broken, deactivated. A sword too sharp in the hands of the dead was dangerous. The boundary between worlds was thin, and respect kept it intact. Across the Pacific, ancient Polynesian cultures believed the soul lingered near the body for days. Families spoke softly, moved slowly, avoided sudden noise. Not for mourning, but guidance. The soul needed calm to find its path. Even today, echoes of these traditions remain, because long after belief systems fade, habits stay. One of the most haunting practices comes from Neolithic Europe. Archaeologists discovered skulls carefully removed from bodies and placed inside homes. Not trophies, Ancestors. The dead lived with the living, watched over meals, heard conversations, shared space. It challenges modern discomfort with death. To them, separation was unnatural. Memory was physical. Some ancient cultures prepared not just for death, but for return. In parts of Africa, burial rites included instructions for the dead. What roads to take, what words to say, what signs to give if they wished to visit. Dreams were considered doorways, not imagination, communication. Even today, many cultures trust dreams more than memory, because memory belongs to the waking world. Dreams do not. Across all these traditions, one quiet pattern emerges. The afterlife was rarely about reward, rarely about punishment. It was about continuity, the continuation of identity, of connection, of presence. Death did not erase the self. It redistributed it. As the night deepens, and your thoughts slow, consider this gentle idea. Ancient humans were not obsessed with death. They were obsessed with meaning. And death was the largest unanswered question they knew. So they answered it the only way humans ever have. With stories, with rituals, with care. You don't need to decide what you believe. You don't need certainty. You only need rest. Let the questions drift. Let history stand watch. And allow yourself to sleep, carried by the same curiosity that has guided humanity for thousands of years. There is a quiet intimacy in how many ancient cultures believed the dead could still feel emotion. In ancient Greece, the soul did not immediately disappear into myth. It lingered, remembered, it longed. This is why coins were placed on the eyes or in the mouth, payment for Charon, the ferryman. But beyond payment, the act itself mattered. It acknowledged that the dead still had needs, still had awareness, still required care. Without the coin, the soul wandered the riverbanks for 100 years. Not tortured, just waiting, alone. In ancient Persia, followers of Zoroastrianism feared contaminating the earth with death. Bodies were placed in towers of silence, exposed to birds and sunlight. This wasn't neglect, it was reverence. The body had served its purpose. Now it must return cleanly to nature. What mattered most was the soul's judgment, not by gods but by conscience. After death, the soul crossed the Chinvat bridge, wide for the righteous, narrow as a blade for the dishonest. Some scholars believe this concept influenced later religious ideas of moral judgment. But originally it was deeply personal. You judged yourself. In the Andes, the Inca mummified their dead and kept them present. Literally, mummies were brought out during festivals, fed symbolically, consulted on decisions. They were not relics. They were elders, still part of society, still shaping the future. This challenges modern ideas of grief. To the Inca, forgetting the dead was the real tragedy. Across the world, burial positions tell quiet stories. Bodies curled into fetal shapes, laid facing the rising sun, aligned with stars, pointed towards sacred mountains. Death was treated like birth, like travel, like orientation. The body became a compass. Some of the most debated discoveries involve grave goods that don't make sense. Tools never used, weapons too large, jewelry intentionally broken, objects placed where no living person could reach. Why include items that serve no earthly purpose? One theory suggests symbolic ownership. Another suggests activation rituals. And some researchers quietly ask, were these objects meant to be used somewhere else? In several cultures, the dead were believed to grow stronger after death, more knowledgeable, more aware, more dangerous if disrespected. This belief created rules. Speak kindly of the dead. Do not disturb graves. Do not forget names. Memory was protection. As your breathing slows, and the night stretches gently around you, notice how none of these beliefs demand certainty. They do not argue. They do not insist. They simply exist, as evidence of something deeply human. The refusal to let connection end abruptly. Ancient people didn't fear death the way we do. They feared disconnection. So they built bridges, with stories, with rituals, with care that extended beyond time. You can let these thoughts drift now, like lanterns floating on dark water. No need to follow them. No need to understand them. History has already done its work, and you are safe to rest.